Welcome to Men Hurt Too, a series brought to you by #Coffee with T, and I'm T. Men Hurt Too is a safe place where men get to share their truth based on their experience, their education, and just the conversations that they have with other men. I'm always excited on Monday because I love to learn from our brothers. I love to hear the truth about men from who better than men. So I'm happy to have with me today Andre Turnbull. So I'm gonna bring Andre right on in because I have Andre's bio. Andre Turnbull is a Jamaican-born visionary and is the founder of Turnbull Enterprises LLC, a parent company for several business brands, which include FWRD Academy, House of Redolence, Mogul Apparel, and the Mogul Summit. Andre is a certified master life coach and corporate training and development specialist in partnership with Prior Learning Solutions. Through this partnership, Andre has facilitated over 130 public and on-site seminars tailored to frontline staff of small to large corporations across the United States of America. I'm gonna stop right there because we're gonna talk about this other stuff because I got some stuff highlighted that I need to talk about and some questions that I need to ask. So welcome, Andre.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. First of all, I love you all. I love that I get to talk to the men because I get to talk to the men behind the scenes, and we have some great conversations behind the scenes, but that's our business. But anyway, Andre, the first thing I like to ask my men is I want to know a little bit about your blueprint. So tell me a little bit about how you were raised. Tell me a little bit about your relationship with your mom and your dad.
So Jamaican born, born in Jamaica. I came here when I was a child. But in terms of my upbringing, went to high school there in Jamaica, and I lived while I was there with my grandmother, and raised partly by my grandmother, but my mother was still very, very active, even though she was living here in the States while I was there doing, in high school. But she was, very much a part of my life. Was very on top of everything, along with my grandmother. So was raised, partly by her, and it was quite the upbringing. I was told that I have somewhat of an old soul, and I think a lot of that came from my grandmother because I learned a lot from her. I learned to cook from my grandma. I learned how to make my bed from my grandmother. I learned how to pray by my grandmother, how to read the Bible. That it all started with her, and of course, my mom did everything that she could, of course, to make sure that she was a part of that upbringing. So as far as my father, my biological father, not much of a relationship there, but it's not strained either. It's not like we don't we don't talk or whatever, because whenever I get back to Jamaica, of course, I always hit him up to let him know, hey, I'm in the country, and let's link up and we talk and whatever. But for the most part, it was my stepfather who was in my life as far as a father figure for majority of my life since I was 7. He was married to my mom for a very, very long time. They were married for a long time until things kind of went sour, and that relationship now became strained between he and I. But now we are in a much better place, thank God. We're able to be cordial and mutual, and have mutual respect for each other. So that's kind of like the blueprint, if you will. That's where it all started. Yeah.
That just gave me a whole plethora of questions. But does your mom and stepfather have children together?
Yes, that'll be my little sister. So, well, no, she's not little anymore. She's an adult, but that's my younger sister. That's the only child they had together. Yeah.
Okay, so you said it got a little strained with your stepfather. So you had and this is why I'd like to touch on these things, because I like people to understand that when our parents need to understand that when we marry somebody and when we have children, our children form their own relationship with them. So when it goes sour with you, you're not the only one that has to go through a breakup. And a lot of times as young people, we don't have the option to say, well, I still like him. So before your mom and your stepfather had trouble and parted ways, how was your relationship with him, and how did it affect you after you had to kind of sort of shift?
So our relationship was great. We had a great relationship because I do also have an older sister. And the relationship with everybody had a great relationship with him because he's a great guy. Well, from what I gathered right before things kind of went left, but the relationship that we had was really, really good. That was the only father I knew. That was the only father that took me places and bought me my first those sets that you could put together with the trains and the
Yes.
all the tracks and stuff. I used to love that. And he bought me my first one. And I remember we sat down, I think I was about 8, and we put it together and he made sure it worked. And it was just like, the relationship was great. It was really amazing. That was someone I really loved, not that I don't have some love left for him, but it's maybe not as much as it was before, but that was someone I looked up to and loved, because I saw how he loved my mom and how he took care of us, until things went sour. And I think that was a part where I got a little bit confused, because I didn't know, because I felt like almost I was being introduced to someone else.
Wow.
And so now the person that I once knew, I'm like, where did that guy go? Like, what happened to him? And that made me very angry. And I went through years of dealing with a lot of like built up anger, because I'm like, I felt betrayed, number one, because I'm like, I thought you were this person, but then you became a whole different person. And I'm like, I don't understand who this is. But as I got older, I had to realize that he also needed grace, because he also had his own childhood trauma, like lots of traumatic issues and a lot of things that were never addressed. And these are things that I also saw growing up, with his side of the family, and the strained relationship even with his mother, and a lot of different things. So I noticed a lot of those things. And as I got older, I'm like, okay, well, it makes a lot of sense. Not that it's an excuse, but I was able to look at it from a different perspective and offer some grace there to say, you know what, he's only human, number one, and he was going through his own thing, and he's had to shoulder a lot of things himself. And so coming into this, he just didn't really know how to do a lot of things, if you will. So of course that affected me a lot, because it was heartbreaking for me. And it almost felt like a death somewhat to me, because I look at it as a sort of grief, and I grieved for years, because I'm like, this is like, even when I look at it now, and my mom has passed, and they were divorced for like maybe 8 years before my mom passed away. And so I look at my kids now, and sometimes I wish we still had that relationship, because this could have been his grandkids, and they could have been So I often think about that, and it breaks my heart. We were set to like get together sometime last year, but the pandemic hit, to just kind of like talk, and just kind of see what we can do in terms of like just coming back together on some sort of cordial manner, but that hasn't happened yet, but I'm hoping that will at some point. So.
Oh, you miss your dad. Oh my goodness.
I do.
Please don't make me cry. It's too early in the morning for this. Sometimes some stuff hits.
Yeah.
Because it resonates with things that I've gone through with my sons. But I hope that you guys reconcile. But it was one thing that you said, and I always say this because I teach a program to women who are dealing with infidelity, and I do a program called the Recovery Room, because grief is a part of a breakup, because a breakup is the death of a relationship, and people don't understand that. You have to go through the grieving stages, because it's the death of something, because grief is from something that we became bonded to. So, and another question, how was it to watch your mother grieve through the death of that relationship?
So the thing about that is, even before we get to like the part of watching her deal with that, because the relationship between them got really tumultuous. Like it was really strained. So, and it was abusive. It was abusive, and on many different levels. And I used to wonder why she would put up with this. And I used to, aside from my anger being towards him, I was also frustrated and somewhat resentful towards her, because I'm like, why is this happening? And why are you even putting up with this? Because now my little sister's in the mix, and she's seeing these things. And I'm like, why don't you just divorce? Like, just be done, because we're seeing this stuff. It's not like you guys are hiding it. Like it's happening right in front of us. And so it came to a point where she finally, mustered up the courage to just file for divorce, and they got a divorce. And I watched her. I could tell it was hard for her, but she still kept, women, y'all, especially Black women, y'all put on.
I got this.
Yeah, you got this. And so she was she was that type of mom, and she put her best foot forward. But I could tell it affected her on many different levels, because even after the divorce, they still had a strained relationship. It was still strained. It was still back and forth and bickering, and it was a lot. And so, but eventually I watched her, build herself back up, and stood firm on her own 2 feet, and eventually she got herself back together. But unfortunately, she got ill after some time, and transition. So yeah, that's
Wow.
it was tough. It was tough. It was tough to see.
Wow. See, I just want women and men and the world listening to understand that the title "Men Hurt Too." Like, there's a lot that we don't acknowledge when it comes to men. Even for your stepfather, like you said, he had a strained relationship with his mother. He had a horrible, things were going on in his family that I was watching, and he was processing that while trying to be the man that we wanted him to be. So I just want people to understand that it's not easy being a man, because as soon as you come out and they say it's a boy, you're no longer a human. All of these it's a boy and man demands become part of your life. Don't cry, don't grieve. Right. So speaking of grief, since we're on that topic, and we all think that when men lose somebody, you're okay. Like women, we get to flounder all over the place, and we get to cry for months, and we get to do this. To lose your mother, I lost my mother 16 years ago to breast cancer, and it still hurts me today. Like moments, like I want my mother. Like recently, I cooked last night, and I had a whole moment about my mom because the food tastes just like her food or whatever. But I'm so sorry you don't have your mother. But how do men process grief, and does it make you feel like I can't grieve, or do you hide in the grief, or do you feel the same pain that I feel because I lost my mother?
So, all right. So I'm going to take my time and slip right into this, right? Because there's so many, there's a few layers to this. And so when she got ill in April of 2013, to be exact. And she was ill for 7.5 months. And to this day, it's still unclear how she just died from this, whatever they diagnosed her with. She was too young to have it anyway, but that's a whole different story because we still don't know what happened. But I feel like she died from she had a disease called myelodysplastic syndrome, which is a rare form of leukemia. It's like blood cancer. And so normally the people who die from that are normally maybe in their 60s or 70s, or have been exposed to cancer before. She had neither of these. She was 54 when she died, and never had cancer before. The only thing that she had was borderline diabetes, which she kicked anyway because she took good care of herself. So that's another thing that kind of trips me up about how this happened. But she went on life support for the last 3 weeks of her life. I think this is where the grief started for me. Because I felt it very strongly in my spirit. I knew that this was going to be it. I just didn't know exactly when, but I knew this was going to take place. And so my grieving process started from then. And so another part of it was the fact that I knew at the time, my children's mother, she was pregnant with my girls. And so now I'm like, okay, all right, so this is going to happen, and my mother's not going to get to see her grandkids.
Wow.
And that's what that part of it right there. And to this day, I still battle with that, because I wish she was here to see them. I wish she was here to hold them and to not only be a grandmother, but to see me, her only son, in this capacity, being a father. And so the grieving process, it was horrible. I'm going to tell you the truth, it was horrible, because when she passed on December 2nd, 2013, you're talking about maybe a month and a half, close to 2 months. My kids were born in February. So the grieving process for me, in terms of dealing with now losing her, I had to shut that off, because now I had to turn on being a father. I had to get into that mode. Okay, I'm a father. What I now have to pour out love into two new human beings after just losing a human being that meant so much to me. So for months, I went on and on and on, and acted not acting like nothing happened, but just trying to be a father and just trying to get acclimated to this new role. And eventually, things just went south for me in terms of my health, because I had a heart condition, and which I still do, but that started to affect me. And the next thing I couldn't work. And I sank into deep depression, and I couldn't sleep at night, couldn't work, couldn't eat, couldn't do anything for months. And I had to go to therapy, and I started therapy then. And even so, I did 6 weeks of therapy, and I had to stop because I realized it was too much. Yeah, I wasn't even ready for therapy because I
Wow.
was not. I wasn't. I really wasn't, because I had to stop going because it's too much. It's too much, because now I had to start digging up, childhood things, and I'm like, I can't deal with this right now because I'm still grieving my mother, and I've not yet grasped the whole idea of what this is. And so, um, I took the time to grieve and took the time to feel everything that I was feeling at every given moment. If there was a moment that I had to cry, I cried. If there were moments that I had to just laugh about some fond memory I had of her, I dealt with it. And that's, those are things that I learned in therapy also. And yeah, I just had to keep going and keep going. But in terms of how it felt, I felt like something was ripped away from, stripped away from me completely. And it's a void that still, I don't think it will ever be filled ever, because it's still a raw emotion for me. It's still raw. And there are times when I talk about her, I can't stop myself from crying, because I just remember how much she went through, and how the transition, how everything went, and the mere fact that she left, she transitioned and never got to see her grandkids. So that was, terrible. It was a horrible thing for me. But
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I totally get it. And it's so funny you said your mom passed on December 2nd. That's my mother's birthday.
wow.
That's
Wow.
crazy. I'm never going to
Yeah.
forget the interview.
Yeah.
But we talk about grief and we talk about men, and to be able to try to deal with that grief, to be grieving and happy at the same time is totally a mind.
Mhm.
That's mental right there. But I want some
Yeah.
people to hear this too. You said
Mhm.
I had to stop therapy because I was not ready.
Right.
Not let people force you into being in
Yes.
therapy,
Yeah,
because
that
that could
too.
be
Yeah.
detrimental to your mental health too.
Oh,
Like I don't want to talk about
yeah. Right.
being beat by my father, or I don't want to
Mhm.
talk about, you know what I'm saying? Because
Mhm.
I just had two twin girls, which
Mhm.
thank God, and God is good because he always knows what to give us when we need it.
Yes. Oh, that's for
He,
sure. For
I
sure.
mean, not that they replace your mom, but double for your trouble.
No
Like
trouble. Yeah.
he has two beautiful baby girls. Because if you don't
Mhm.
know, Andre has twin daughters who are 7 years old,
Yeah.
ladies. So we already know, because we women, what that's gonna look like for you for the rest of your life. So,
Yeah.
and then, now let's talk about, dealing with the mother of your children, right?
Mhm.
So co-parenting and dealing with the mother of your children
Mhm.
when you have a mother. Because I don't, sometimes I don't understand, but that's why I'm here with you to ask you these questions. How men treat women, bad, or cheat, or do things that are unsavory when you have a mother and sister.
Mhm.
How could you treat another woman when you got a mother and sister like that? But we could talk about that
Right.
too. But
Mhm.
how did you begin to balance the relationship with a woman after losing your mother? Because that's the greatest loss of losing a woman.
Mhm.
How did you get your emotions back in check, and balance that thing out?
Yeah. So at the time we were married. We were married.
Mhm.
We were married for 11 years. So at the time we were married. And so there was also that being a husband too, right? And so thankfully she was very supportive during that time, very supportive. And that's something that I will always be grateful to her for. And she really helped me get through it somewhat, and just being there, and just being supportive, and being an ear, just for me to to listen to me. She may not have understood the depth of the emotions and what I was feeling, because obviously she didn't lose her mom, right? So that it's in itself, and I must say I dealt with a lot of different emotions, right? Sometimes my emotions were up, sometimes they were down, and sometimes I had outbursts, not necessarily in anger, but just I would just lash out sometimes, because I was dealing with all these emotions, and I'm trying to sift through all these emotions that I'm feeling, because now I'm a father. I'm trying to figure this out, and then I lost my mom, and on top of that, when she passed, my younger sister had to come and live with us because she could no longer live in a house by herself.
Oh,
And so I
wow.
had to take on that father role too, what I mean, of being a father to her, and making sure that she was in school, and that, I'm talking about PTA meetings. I was there. I had to do all of these things. So a lot of I was being pulled in a lot of different directions. And so it was rough. It was rough. And you know, we had our moments. We had our moments when it was tough, and it was tumultuous. But you know, we got through them as time went on. And you know, but unfortunately, we are not together anymore. And that's, you know, I do believe that that is the best for both of us at this point. And for the sake of our children, you know, one thing we have decided on is to, aside from whatever personal issues we may have with each other, our daughters need us, and they need two healthy parents, and they need two parents who love them and care about them. And that's what that needs to be about right now. And every other thing that we need to do with our personal issues on our own, and just be parents and co-parent the best way that we can, because at the end of the day, they didn't ask for this, right? They didn't ask for any of it. They didn't ask to be here, and they're here, and they're our responsibility, and we got to do what we got to do to make sure that they're okay. So
right. And you said something key at the beginning, that your mother and your stepfather, at some point, you, in your mind, and we as parents don't really understand this, the kids are thinking, well, why don't y'all just get a divorce? Because this is too much for us. Yeah. So did that shed light on you to be how you are in a relationship with your children's mother? That I know that being in the house, hearing my parents yelling and screaming at each other, I felt myself that it would be better to be in a healthy house than a broken house with two parents. So did that give you some kind of inkling of saying, I'm not going to do that to my kids?
Right. It did. I had to make that decision, and it's not like we just gave up and didn't try. We tried.
Right.
But it had to come to a point where we were like, you know what? I think it's because it's one thing to, because we always hear about broken homes, and we attribute broken homes to a single parent household. That's not necessarily it, because you can have a single parent household and it still be a whole home, right? It's still, it may not be.
That again. I need you to say that one more time. Say that again.
No, it's a broken home is not necessarily a home with because it's a single parent household. It all comes down to what the type of environment, the type of atmosphere, and the type of space that parent creates for their child or children. It has, because you can be in a two-parent household and it is broken, it is terrible, and it's just there for as a facade and as a face, you know what I mean, to show people like, hey, we're from a two-parent household, and this is what. Because I've met people who have come from two-parent households who are horrible people, all kinds of stuff was happening in their house, and because of an image, their parents stayed together, and it was a toxic and unhealthy environment. Then they came about and repeated the same thing. So I decided, no, I'm not gonna have my kids grow up in the, no, I'd rather us go our separate ways, figure out our own stuff, because at the end of the day, we both came into this marriage with our own baggage and projected our own things onto each other, you know, and that's one thing I will never sit here and like point fingers, because it's easy to do that, but we both did. So it has to come to a point where somebody has to make the decision, say, you know what, this is not healthy, this is not good anymore, and it's okay for us to just go our separate ways. You know, of course, it's going to bring up and it's going to unearth a lot of things and a lot of feelings and a lot of emotions, and there may be a lot of hurt involved. But at the same time, it's our responsibility to heal from that hurt anyway, right? In order to forward as parents for our children. So, yeah.
You just gave me a whole therapy session. I love you so much. Listen here.
Thank you.
Because people, like you said, we got to understand. People, homes are broken with two parents in them.
Yes.
You put two people together, don't mean it's not two broken people. Right, and it's okay, like you said, to part ways and say, I'm not going to kick my children's mother's back in because you spoke highly of her on our last panel.
Right.
And before we came on here, you said, I can, because we talked that you had two daughters, you said their mother, like, I can never do.
Yeah, she does an amazing job. I always say that my girls have the best mom in the world. Like, she does an incredible job with those two. And I've seen that from the moment she found out she was pregnant. It's like she just evolved, and then when they were born, just evolved into this mom, you know, who does. I would never take that away from her, ever. I would never ever take that away from her, because she does a damn good job. She really does. She really does.
That's just some grown man-ish. I'm just gonna say it, because there's a lot of men. We have some good moms out here, and then people get their emotions involved, so they want to bash her and tell the new girl this and that and this. And listen, we went our separate ways. We cool. Our kids are healthy. They come to two whole homes. They come to my home, which is whole, and they come to her home, which is whole. And when we get together, they see two whole adults that love each other. We not together, but we don't hate each other. We still love each other. So let's get to, you said something. It's okay not to be okay.
Right.
Talk a little bit about that from a man's standpoint.
Yeah, I think as men, particularly Black men, we are viewed as these machines, if you will, almost like we have wires running through our bodies. And at times I have to remind myself that, and even before I got really, I wouldn't say, I think I was always in tune with my emotions. I think I was always that person. But as time went on, I became somewhat calloused towards myself because I felt like I had to always be strong. And if I showed any sign of emotion, then that means I'm weak, or it means I'm acting like a girl, or that whole thing. That's a whole separate situation.
We ain't even gonna talk about that because we don't want we ain't gonna talk about that because we don't want nobody inboxing us.
Yeah, right. So, but yeah, I had to come to, and I learned this in my current therapist, that it's okay to not be okay. You don't have to be okay all the time, and that's okay. Because we sometimes tend to subscribe to this toxic positivity. Like when somebody says they're not okay, it's like, oh, why are you? There are other people who have it worse than you, and I think yeah, there are other people who have it worse than me. But here's the thing: this is my thing, and this is what I'm dealing with. This is what I'm going through, and this is what I'm feeling. And it's okay for me to feel my feelings right now. And if I feel sad about a particular situation, if I feel angry, if I feel, if I feel like crying about it, if I feel maybe I have to cuss at some point, I think I'm allowed to be that way, and it's okay to be that, because at the end of the day, we are humans, right? We're humans first. We're humans first before we're ever before we're mothers, before we're fathers, before we are brothers, sisters, spouses, whatever your title is. We're humans first. And as a human first, you are allowed to not be okay, and it's okay to not be okay. It's okay. Now, at the end of the day, it's your responsibility, however, to not stay in that not okay space. It's okay to feel it, but at some point you have to decide, hey, even though there's no time limit given to this, but as far as I know it, there has to come a time where you have to be, if it's starting to affect how you function when you're through your daily routines, if that's starting to affect even the relationships around you, then you have to make a decision, say, what, I can't stay in this state anymore. I have to do what I need to do, whether it's through therapy, whether it's through some sort of self-care routine, whatever it is, talking to someone, do what you got to do to get out of that. But don't ever feel guilty because you don't feel okay. It's okay. It's fine. We are given these emotions for a reason. It's okay. It's okay.
That's so good. Wait a minute. First of all, toxic positivity. Somebody needs to hear that today, because listen, don't be telling me that, don't try to be positive and say somebody got it worse than you. That's toxic positivity. I love
that's toxic positivity.
You need to write that book. Toxic positivity. I never heard it like that before in my entire life. I didn't know what to call that thing.
But you know what? I didn't even coin the phrase. I actually saw it like on a meme on Instagram, and I had to stop. And I said, wait a minute, because I didn't know what that was either. Because I'm also guilty of doing that.
Right.
I realized I'm also guilty of doing that. And I was like, wait a minute, toxic positivity. And I started to think of how many times I've done that to people, and people have done that to me. And what I realized, what I was doing when I was doing that, is kind of like negating people's feelings and telling people you can't feel. And it doesn't make any sense, because then what am I supposed to do? Where do I put these emotions? Where do I put these feelings then, if I can't feel them? Because they're made to be felt, because they're feelings. So
that's so good. Please, you just set a whole bunch of people free, and you just told a whole bunch of people about themselves in a nice way. Stop doing that. Yeah. Like it's like people who post about God, and then in the end of the post they say haters gonna hate. You can't do both.
Right.
That's toxic positivity. You cannot put the scripture and then at the end of the post put haters gonna hate. Like, no. You got to stop that. Toxic positivity. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. Healing is messy, but worth it. Let's talk about your healing journey and the messiness.
Yeah. Wow. It's messy. And I look, the thing is, I heard that before, but my current therapist that I have now, before I started with him, and I started back in August of 2019 with the therapist that I'm currently with. Yeah, it was August 31st, my first session with him. And before that, I would always hear people talk about therapy and how messy it is. And I never understood what they meant. What does that even mean? Like, what is it? What do you mean messy? Isn't it to help you to to get over certain things? Like, what are you saying? Until I started. And I'm gonna tell you this, it started getting messy from the first session, because when I walked into this man's office and I sat down, he asked me, his first question to me was, "Who are you?" And I was like, "Oh, well, I'm Andre. I'm Andre. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm this and that. I'm a father." And he stopped me again. He said, "No, who are you?" And I started again. And he's like, "Nope." He's like, "At your core, define yourself to me." And I remember I stopped and I broke down in tears. I broke down because I had no idea how to answer that question. And that's when I realized I had not even established my own identity. I didn't know who I was. And then it started to unearth a lot of things, right? Because, we act out in certain ways, and we react, and we respond to things in a certain way. And sometimes we can chalk it up to, and even though we can say, "Hey, we are human," but some people can say, "Well, this is just who I am, and that's just how I am." But that's not always the case, because sometimes that's coming from somewhere. Sometimes that's rooted in something else, right? And you don't realize that sometimes the way you respond to certain things is actually a trauma response. Oh. And so I was starting to realize that a lot of ways that I was responding to things, whether it's through my interpersonal relationships with friends or with family members, or even with at the time my spouse, right? A lot of things weren't necessary, even though things were said to trigger certain things. At the end of the day, it's about how you respond to those triggers, right? And so I realized how I was responding to a lot of things wasn't necessarily because of the person that was triggering me, so to speak, but it's because of my deeply rooted issues that I didn't have a handle on. And so as I went through therapy, the more I went, the more I start to unearth things. And I realized, oh my God, like I was suffering from abandonment issues too, from the mere fact that, I lost the relationship with my stepfather, and I lost my mom. That's abandonment, right? To some degree. And so I was dealing with all of these things, and I was angry, and there was some deeply rooted anger issues, and having dealt with what I dealt with when I was 14, and going through rape, and those are, so all these things. And so this is why I say it gets messy. It gets messy before it gets better, because in order to heal, a lot of times we're taught, even as Black folks, and I'll say Caribbean Black folks to be exact, we tend to sweep things under the rug sometimes, a lot of times. And in order to really clean house, you got to lift up the carpet, you got to scrape all that stuff from up under there and actually get it out. There's no way to heal if you don't peel back the layers you got to go to the root. You got to go to the root, because if you keep clipping it off at the top, it's going to sprout. It's going to keep springing up. If you look at a garden, right? If you have weeds growing in a garden, if you keep clipping off the top of the weeds, there's still going to be weeds around, and eventually they're going to choke the plant or the plants that you're trying to grow, right? But you got to get down in the root and dig it up and take it out of there, so it doesn't have any sort of residue left to spring up again sure, as life goes on, we're always going to have issues, we're always going to have things, but it's always good to go back to the root of that and figure out what that is, and dig that up from the root and move on and deal with it. So that's what I mean when it says it gets messy. It does, because you try to heal, and then you realize, oh, well, I'm going to therapy because this person may have hurt me or whatever. And then you realize, although I was hurt by this person, I was also hurt by, my uncle, or my, what I'm saying? And because my uncle did that very similar thing that this person did, that's where that's coming from. It's not necessarily this one person. It's coming from an entire line of other people, who are doing things to you. So yeah, it gets, this is what I meant by it gets messy. It gets messy, but it's worth it. It's worth it. It's really worth it.
I love this. And we talked about some stuff on the panel, the little boy inside, dealing with the little boy inside. So I just want every man that's listening right now to be okay with going to therapy. And I'm so glad that you share that. Like, I've been with my my therapist since August 31st, you said 2019?
2019, yes.
2019. Like, men have to hear this from other men who look like you. Like, you don't look like a man, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm from the
Right.
hood, right? So
Right.
I try to connect with my audience from that angle and the angle of I have evolved in some areas,
Yeah.
but look at me. I'm just a around the way girl, just like you. So I want
Right.
our brothers to see, yes, I'm in my hoodie today, but I put on a suit too.
Yeah.
But I
Oh
go to a
yeah.
therapist because I need help.
Right.
So you talked about
Yeah.
uh dealing with rape. Like
Mhm.
how does a man get to the point of that, even that truth of being
Mhm.
in a situation like that and getting past those emotions are people going to judge me or am
Mhm.
I less than or did that turn me into this? So how do you get past that mess? Because that's messy.
Oh yes, it is. It is. So growing up in a Jamaican culture, um, it's th- I'll say this: there was not a lot of space given to young men to talk about things like this if it did happen to them. Women got more space to talk about it, but also women sometimes weren't even believed that that these things happen to them. So if women can go through that and sometimes not believe, can you imagine for a little boy like
Right.
myself?
Oh,
And I carried that. I shouldered. I carried that for years, and was not able to talk about it. I wasn't able to talk about it with, and I mentioned it on the panel discussion that I wasn't able to tell my mom, because I I knew that it would have broken her heart, and
right.
she would have blamed herself. And then I was also blaming myself for this happening to me because I was like, maybe had I gone home that night, or maybe that would not have happened to me. So I walked around with that guilt, and said it was my fault this whole time. And I was chalking it up to, oh no, I was just molested, until I was telling my therapist about it, and he was like, no, that's not, because you don't want to say the word rape because it's like it's so morbid, and it's like, oh my god, and it's like, oh, I was
Right.
molested. And then he was like, no, 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 that's not what it is. You were assaulted, and this is what happened to you, and you have to stand in that and feel what that feels like. And I had to stand in. I'm like, oh my God, this is really what happened to me. Because for so many years I just held on to, this just happened to me, and it's like whatever, because I compartmentalized it and like locked it away, because I'm like, can't talk about this. You talk about that, then you're gonna be labeled and this, that, and the third, and yeah. So it was hard. It was
Right.
hard, and not being able to share it with some of the most important people in my life, and to have them transition and not know. For instance, my mom and my grandmother died and didn't know, and then I couldn't tell my sisters, and I couldn't tell anyone because I felt like it was unsafe to talk about it, because there
Right.
was no safe space at all. So I shouldered that myself and carried that around myself until I had to tell my therapist. And yeah, and now I'm in thankfully I'm in a much better place, thankfully, with therapy, where I can talk about it and not feel the sting of it, so to speak. Right.
Right.
Even though it still brings up certain emotions, because it's like, oh my God, this happened to me. But at the same time, I think where my emotions are now with this is looking at the fact that there are other little boys who had gone through that, who went through that, or are going through that right now and can't talk.
Right.
And so my heart breaks. That's where the heartbreak for me comes in now, because now I'm like, I'm in a better place. I can talk about it because it's my story and I get to own it. And the person who did that to me doesn't own that story anymore. Like I dealt with my emotions with that. Still going through therapy, still talking about it, but I own my story right now. And so where my heartbreak comes from is just the fact that there are so many other people who are dealing with that, so many other little boys who can't talk about it. And so
Wow.
I think about how much they must be going through right now, or whether it happened years ago or it's happening now, but there's no safe space for them. And so
Wow.
that's where I'm at right now with this thing, and trying to figure out how can I be of some help. And if helping means that I tell my story, then that's what it's going to have to be. Because one particular scripture in the Bible that I remember, is that we're overcomers by the word of, by the blood of the Lamb, by the word of our testimony.
Mhm.
And a lot of times you go through a lot of things and you hurt, and yes, it does hurt. But a lot of times our healing and our testimony is not necessarily for us, but if it's for somebody else. And so just by telling my story, I believe I may be able to help someone else speak out before it's too late, right? Or tell somebody else before you get to a point of feeling suicidal or feeling like I can't deal with this anymore because there's no safe space for me to voice this. So
wow, like that is so powerful, because we have the Me Too movement for women, right? But me too. There's boys that are saying me too, me too, me too. But something powerful you said, I couldn't tell anybody that this happened to me because I saw women say it happened to them and people didn't believe them. So why on earth would they believe a boy, a male, a man, even though you were 14, somebody would do that to them? And I want every person listening right now to understand, we have to protect our boys just like we protect our girls. This is happening to our sons at a rapid rate. We just don't know about it because they don't have a safe space to heal. They've been taught to push it away, let it go. That's not what it was. You weren't assaulted. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have to give our men a safe space. The Me Too movement. Okay, it wasn't just you, it's us too. So because, and I'm not gonna talk about R. Kelly, but Me Too. R. Kelly, me too. So he deserves to be punished for his crime, but he needs to be in psychotherapy and lock him in a mental institution, not a jail cell. Because as soon as his time is up, what do you think he's going to do? Because he didn't deal with this. He's going to come out and do the same thing. So
needs to be rehabilitated. Yeah. Right. Yeah, definitely. I agree.
That's the word right there. But we don't give him that grace. Because they didn't even address that when they showed the little clip of him saying that he was molested by his sister. They didn't even address. They just kept right on going. No, he me too. Because I'm a boy mom, so I'm like, we're not gonna talk about the fact that Andre just said he was violated. We gonna keep that moving. No, we're not doing that no more. So whatever way I can support you and your initiatives, please let me know. You always have my platform. Because I always say truth plus transparency equals healing. Amen. That's the only way we're going to heal.
Yep.
So let's talk about accountability as far as men, human men holding each other accountable, because we see so many men that are doing things they have no business doing, not just cheating, because everybody be talking, oh, he cheated. I see men doing stuff out here they got no business doing. How do we hold them accountable and support? Without, because nobody wants to be accused, because that'll shut you down or put you on a defense. So how do we help you guys with accountability, and how do you help each other?
So one of the first things that I look at with that, because it's as men, we are sometimes driven by ego and pride. And so we often believe that because of that, we cannot be, we're above correction sometimes.
Oh,
we're above reproach and rebuke, if you will. Right. But I think for me in particular, and this is not to, make anybody else seem like, or indifferent, but I often look at it, how I was raised. And how my mom and my grandma raised me to always be accountable for the things that I say and do. I was always held accountable for that. And so for me, when it comes to, and sometimes you because of you can get caught up in who you are sometimes and what people view you as. So you're sometimes not open to being, somebody holding you accountable for stuff, but you have to have the right people around you. And pride cannot be a part of that, because once you're lifted up in pride and your ego, somebody holding you accountable or even you holding yourself accountable, or even holding someone else accountable, is never going to happen. And so for me, I'm a part of this men's collective called Mastermind Connect. And one of the things that we do there is not only do we provide a safe space for men to be themselves and we not only do we provide community, but we hold each other accountable. Because I remember when I first got separated from my ex, and I remember I used to post stuff on social media because I was angry. I was pissed. I was posting stuff, and I remember two of them in particular would reach out to me and say, "Hey, take that down." like take that down and remove that. And I used to want to debate and argue like, why? I'm going through this. And I said, no, regardless of that, you still can't do that. Right. And so I look at that as accountability, because sometimes we may think we're in the right because we are feeling a certain emotion towards a certain thing or about a certain thing. So we feel like, it's my right to do this or react in this way, even though it's okay for you to feel what you feel. Right. You also have to be accountable, right, for the way you respond and the way you react to those things. Right. Because even though you are human and you may react in a certain way, you still have to you have to understand that sometimes your reaction may affect a whole bunch of other people. And so you have to be held accountable to that, or accountable for that rather. So you first have to have the right people around you. I believe when it comes to accountability, you have to have the right people around you. It has to be a safe space too for you to hold that person accountable, and for people to hold you accountable, so to speak.
Right.
So yeah.
I absolutely 100% love that, because I have my core. I call my 4 girls my core 4, and then some other women who are around me who will all the way send me, they won't even say nothing, they'll just send me the eyeballs, the little eyeball.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, uh-oh. And they don't even have to say take that down. When I see them eyeballs, I know I'm like, nope, because all I hear is you better than that. You better than that.
Because if you're around a bunch of people who are yes people all the time, and people who are just co-signing everything you do, those are not your friends. Those are your indentured servants. Like those are not friends. Like they're just your servants. So they're gonna say yes to everything, and they're gonna to every beckoning call and to everything that you say. They're just gonna co-sign to it. But you can't, if you have friends around you that can't call you out on your stuff, then you don't have friends. There's a bunch of people.
And we have to be careful of the people that we have around us who are people pleasers, because so many of us, and this is where we have to be very careful. So many of us, men and women, and you could tell me if this is about men too, don't want to be alone. So they say, oh, if I tell Dre that, he might not want to go play basketball. He might not want to hang out with me. So how do we deal with that, of having those people around us who just really want to be in our presence, or they have abandonment issues, or they don't want to be alone, or they're scared or fearful of the consequences of them holding you accountable? How do we deal with those type of people? Do we let them go, or do we have the conversation with them like, yo, hold me accountable to my mess?
I do believe it's important to have the conversation, because letting them go may not be the best thing for them, because a lot of what I learned about people pleasers, people who are so dedicated to just pleasing people all the time, that's a trauma response. That is a response to some sort of trauma, why they feel either they weren't validated when they were younger, or it could stem from some parental issues, right, of not feeling appreciated, or not feeling like they were worthy or worth it, or whatever. So they're constantly trying to please someone in order to get that validation and get to get that pat on the back. And while there's nothing wrong with being appreciated, but it's okay to have that conversation. Say, hey, you know what, hold me accountable. Hold me accountable for if you see that I'm not doing the right thing, or if I have said something to you or done something that hurt you, hold me accountable for it. Like, speak up and let me know, hey, you know what, this thing that you said or this thing that you did actually hurt me. And you never know, just by them holding you accountable, they may be able to help themselves too, to actually get to the root of their own issues. So I do believe that the conversation is worth having with those people.
That's good stuff. Tell me if I did something to offend you, because we offend people too. And if people don't tell us, we don't know. Because a lot of people just say, oh, that's just Andre. No, don't just let that be.
No.
Don't throw me by the wayside.
Yeah. That doesn't fly with me at all. I'm never the type, oh, that's just that. Nope. No. I'm gonna let you know exactly how I feel. This is what you did. Because the thing about me is I don't pretend well with certain, because my face doesn't hide certain things. So it's like, if I'm not too pleased, you're gonna know. And I'll never keep you in suspense. I'm trying to figure, like, you're gonna know at some point that something, even if I don't say it right away, you're gonna know something is off. Something is not right. So gotta have those conversations.
In your coaching, and when you go and do seminars and webinars, you teach some things. So I'm gonna talk about 3 of them because our time is winding down, but I want to talk about this for myself. So one of them is how to deal with difficult people.
Yeah.
Please give me one tip.
So one of, because I taught this, oh my God, I taught this seminar so many times. And normally it's for, the corporate world and people in corporate America. But one of the things that I learned, and one thing that I do when I'm preparing any sort of seminar, any of these seminars that I used to do, I would also look for how I can apply it to myself first, because how I do my seminars, I never want to just go in and like a bunch of slides and whatever. I make it very personal. I make it, so people feel comfortable and people feel open to talk. And so one of the things with that, one thing that stuck out to me from teaching that was you have to always temper your response, because a lot of times people may say things to us, right? And even though we know it may annoy us or may get, how you respond to that can actually set the tone for where the rest of the conversation is going to go. Now, I'm not saying you should just sit there and be a pushover for people and have people say whatever they want to you or whatever, but you also, and again, it goes along with that's within reason too, right? Depending on the environment, depending on the space that you're in, right? You also have to temper. You got to temper your response, because people a lot of times will say things to get you there, to kind of like prove a point or some, oh, see, I told you that's how they were, or this, that, and the third. You got to temper your response. Temper how you respond to things. Always. And I response has to do also with reaction too, because a lot of times we don't respond, we react. And that's also a different thing too, right? You gotta, that's why I'm saying temper the response, right? Because sometimes the response is not a response, it's a reaction to what the person says. So yeah, temper your response. Sometimes if it means that you got to take some time before you even respond to that person to center yourself and to gather your thoughts, take that time. Because being reaction, being like just reacting sometimes can lead to an entirely different situation, and then things get out of hand for no reason. So that's one advice that I would give. Just temper your response. Take some time to kind of recenter yourself if it's something that kind of throws you off balance a little bit, depending on what that difficult person said or did to you.
That's good. Listen, walk away. If this could be used in a job, in a home, just if you need to center take 5 minutes, go somewhere and count 10.
Take time.
And think about, because I always say, whatever somebody says to me, that's them.
Yeah.
My behavior is me. My behavior is me. So I try to be me at all times, because I try to, I'm loving, I'm kind, I'm nice, I'm understanding. So I try not to let people take me out of that, because we can conform to the other person. And my mother would always say, when you entertain a fool, you become a fool.
That's right. That's it right there. That is true.
You gonna turn into them, or you gonna walk away. Not, she said, long as nobody don't put their hands on you,
that's it.
You're good. You can walk away, whatever other people think. And that's one of the things too. What do you think about that? A lot of times we react out of what we think other people are gonna think about us.
Yeah, it's that right there. It is true. A lot of times we do react based on what we think people. But again, oftentimes when people say things to offend and to throw us off, or to just be downright nasty, a lot of times it's a reflection of who they are, right? And the age-old saying, misery loves company, it is the truth. They're miserable, they want you to be miserable too. They want you to be angry too, right? Because it now kind of takes the focus off of them, right? And say, okay, well, you know what? Here's somebody else who's just as pissed off and just as angry as I am, right? So that's why you got to temper your response. You got to look at how, kind of like measure the situation. And again, it's not a one call close. It's not always going to happen. You're not always going to have the time to temper your response, because sometimes people say things to you, you're like, listen, you go straight to it, and so it's going to be a trial and error thing, right? It's not a one-time thing. So by me saying it's not saying, okay, go out and try it tomorrow, it's gonna automatically work. No, because again, it depends on the person, the environment, and what you're dealing with. But as time goes by, just practice that a little bit more. And it's easier said than done. Say, well, I don't care what people think about me, but in truth, in fact, we do care. We do care, but you got to care about what you think about you more than what they actually think about you. So
yes, we do care about what people think about us, but I don't care about what people think about me. Like,
right.
I mean, I do care because, of course, I'm not going to be out here wilding and acting crazy.
Right.
I have business doing at 51 years old because I got my sons. You know, to some level we have to care, but we have to have that balance of if I walk away, for the men, if you walk away from a fight because somebody is talking mess, don't worry about what people think. You be the big person. You ain't gonna be out there scrapping in the street, 51 years old, 50, 45, fighting somebody because they said something to you. Yo, dude.
Yeah.
As long as you don't put your hands on me, we're good. Because we thinking we with our boys or we with our girls and somebody says something or does something, we got to be a certain way. Right. So we're not doing that anymore. Managing emotions under pressure. Help me out here. I mean, listen, pressure will make you do some stuff and your emotions will get the best of you.
Yes. Wow. So in reference to that, managing emotions under pressure, because I mean, I've been through some things, right, that have put some incredible amounts of pressure on me. But one thing I've learned to do is to kind of evaluate what's happening. And again, this is not something that you're gonna be able to do often, but just reevaluate and take a step back and look at it like, okay, do I need to respond or react this way, or do I really need to look at it this way, right? But actually focus on the ways that I can actually make this thing better. And what is it trying to teach me, right? What can I get out of this? What are some of the lessons that are involved in this? Instead of just succumbing to the pressure and just reacting based off the pressure, but managing those emotions. Now it's easier said than done, right? It's way easier said than done, because depending on what is causing the pressure, it can cause your emotions to run wild. But just taking a step back at times and just kind of reevaluating everything and kind of seeing where you're kind of, when you take a step back, budget out your energy, right? And budget out to see where you're, because you may be putting more energy into one place or one particular thing that really doesn't deserve all of that energy, right? And so because of that, then, the pressure starts to build up from these other things. So kind of like budget out your energy and see where you can put things and where you can divide up your energy in order to not make it feel so much of, a big pressure to actually get things done or to get through a particular situation. So that will actually help to some degree. And I'm not a mental health professional, but just from what worked for me, right? Just take a step back, because it's easy to get caught up in emotions sometimes. It's very, very easy, because again, we are humans and we have our feelings and we have to feel them. But just taking a step back sometimes and reevaluating everything, and then budgeting out that energy.
Listen, who I used to be, I'm glad I ain't hurt no more, because I will bust the windows out your car.
Ooh, I hear that.
Because my emotions would get the best of me. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I would take that minute, I will be in that emotion, and I'll be like, "Oh, you gonna do that? Okay, I got you. I could match that." So I'm just glad I'm not there anymore. And I just like the steps that you give, because people need help, and sometimes they don't know how to ask for help. So last thing, and then I'm gonna let you tell everybody where they can find you. And just to connect with you, the men. I want the men to have a space to go, to be able to just let some things go. How important is constructive criticism?
How important is constructive criticism? I think with that, and I'm going to use the two words, constructive criticism. I think a lot of focus is placed on the word criticism rather than the constructive part, because constructive derived from the word construct, right? And if you look at construction, it's actually building something up, right? It's building, it's putting together something, it's establishing something, right? So if we focus on the constructive part of it instead of just the word criticism, then that will make it a little bit easier to digest, and to know that whatever this person is saying, again, depending on whoever this is, it's coming from a place that is meant to build me up. And whatever they're saying to me, it's meant to take me to the next level of my life and not necessarily build me down. When it's just criticism, then you got to question that. But if it's constructive, then you got to look at the fact that it's there to actually build you up and not to tear you down. So of course that depends on whoever it is, and it depends on the situation again. So yeah, and you gotta in that moment look at it like, okay, because you'll know constructive criticism. You'll know when it is constructive criticism. You will
Right.
know. You'll know from when it's just somebody trying to tear you down, or just being completely negative. You'll know. You'll know. But don't focus so much on the criticism part of it, but look at the constructive part of it. How can I use and utilize what this person is telling me to better my life, or to further, or to correct a certain situation or a certain issue or problem that I may have? How can I use this to make me a better person? So it's yeah.
That's so good. Just the mental vision of
Yeah.
that. The
Mhm.
person is there giving constructive criticism to build you up, like you're building a building, and to
Mhm.
elevate you higher.
Right.
That was good.
Yeah.
I'm good now. Anybody got some constructive criticism for me? Don't be coming and just telling me stuff, because I don't want to hear all of that.
Right. Right.
But if it's
Right.
constructive criticism, if you are a person in my circle and you see me and you see some way that I can elevate, or I
Yeah.
could build something different, or
Mhm.
something from a blueprint, or you've been down that way, please let me
Yeah.
know. I'm never too
Yeah.
old to learn. Never.
Right.
So
Right.
Andre, this has been, if you just
Yes.
tuned in, this is Andre Turnbull, and he is
Yeah.
a powerhouse of knowledge and wisdom.
Thank
And
you.
he has really shared some good stuff from his truth. And if you just tuned in, go back and watch this, or go back and listen to this, and make sure you just take notes, because there was so much juicy, good stuff in here to help us elevate to our next level. And that's what we need to do. So I want to just give you the opportunity to let us know where we can find you. If you have a book, you selling anything, you have a program, course, whatever it is, please let the people know.
So I'm mostly on Instagram. Anyways, you can definitely find me on Instagram at Mr. Andre T. That's MrAndret. I'm also a part of this men's collective called Mastermind Connect, which you can also find them on all social media platforms, as well as Brothers in Briefcases, which I'm wearing the hoodie right now. So it's at Brothers in Briefcases on Instagram, on Facebook. And so those two platforms are dedicated to providing a safe space for men to just be and to be themselves. And yeah, so you can definitely connect with me on either one of those. And yeah, in terms of a book, by the end of this year, I'm working on somewhat of a memoir and my own autobiography, if you will, just to kind of tell my story. So I'm working on that. I'm also working on an ebook that I'm going to be putting a lot more effort into releasing. But as that time goes by, of course, I'll let you know, Trey, and
Yes.
you can blast it out, and we'll talk more about that. So yeah, that's about it. That's it.
Yes, please. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for your time and
You're
your
welcome.
truth. I have notes. You saw us sitting here taking notes. I take notes from the
Right.
men. I don't know if the
Right,
ladies are taking notes, but we here to learn about men. Like, we really are here
Yes.
to learn about men from their truth, from their perspective, from their education, from other
Yeah.
men that they've been around, mostly from their experience, from you guys' experiences, because this is
Yeah.
really, really helping me out. Like I said, we were talking a little bit on the back end about my oldest son, and what you talked about, like, really helped me. And I'm gonna have a conversation with him today, because we just need to have a conversation. But thank you for everybody who tuned in. And if you're listening right now, please like, please share, please leave a review. Let us know what you think. If you have any questions for Andre, please put them in the chat. Or what would you have an email address, Andre, where they can send you email?
Oh, yeah, sure. That's Andre.Turnbull at TurnbullEnterprises.net. They can send me definitely send emails.
Please reach out to Andre if this was helpful to you, or if you need more help and you want to do it in a private setting, please send him a DM, men. I'm sure he won't mind. And again, thank you, Andre. Remember what I tell you guys at the end of all my broadcasts: you deserve the best. Yes, I'm talking to you. You deserve the best. Now go get it. Peace and blessings. And remember Psalm 147:3. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. Psalm 147:3. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. Peace and blessings. I will see you guys next time.
Awesome.